Hello and welcome to my tutorial on how to a method of using an HDR to build an environment, something like this, and considerations, which is the bit that I think is sometimes glossed over. Um, this is a response to a video that I saw that someone did where they'd sort of implemented the HDR, but they'd kind of neglected to mention that the horizon wasn't level and all this sort of stuff. Um, so the main secret, well, I say secret, it's not really a secret. If you there's two methods of using HDR. If it's for visual effects, they'll shoot they'll shoot whatever on a camera, an Alexa or a Red pick or whatever, the plate photography they call that. So they'll shoot that just conventionally, and then they'll take an HDR either before or after the shot. And so what they'll use is they'll use the plate photography as the background and the HDR to light it. So that's one method, which I won't be going into, but I think it's worth explaining that that's what's normally done. And then there's this other method of if you've just got an HDR and you want to use it, putting a shadow capture on it and possibly distorting the spherical image, so that some of it's on a plane. So if it was a street, you might have the road plane, and you might have building planes, and then you project this spherical HDR image onto the buildings that you've modelled, and the road that you modelled. But there's one important consideration, that if you do that, you must make sure that when you're modelling from the centre of the projection, because obviously there'll be parallax shifts, so that the camera needs to be exactly where the HDR pano head is, effectively. You can move a bit, but you'll notice here, you can see that there's distortion that happens. So you'd have to basically remove in Photoshop or something the lamppost and put 3D lampposts in. But it works amazingly well. I mean, I'll just show you this quickly, if it'll let me. But you'll notice that the horizon is level because we're not going very high up the ground. I positioned the ground plane 2 meters because I figured that the HDR was taken about 2 meters above the road or something like that. So you have to kind of come up with that and then position the road accordingly. Now you can, if you're moving, I don't know, this is moving about sort of 3 or 4 meters around the main projection point. It's not too bad. You don't really, apart from the immediate lamppost in the foreground, it works amazingly well. And that's one consideration, that if you've got an HDR, stuff that's in the immediate foreground, unless it's on a plane, will distort really badly. So that's fine if the trees are like 10 meters away. And so let's get going with this and see if I can quickly walk you through it, or try to at least. Anyway, so the first thing we're going to do is start with a sphere. There's basically 3 elements to this. There's the lighting sphere. Just a quick look, you'll see that the shadows are soft. Now the lighting sphere is an HDR image, but it doesn't need to be terribly high res. The one I'm using is only like 1K, but then I took it into Photoshop and blurred it, and that gives us lovely blurred shadows. You see like the tree shadows there, it's nice blurred. So that's what I recommend you do, is get both a very high res one for the reflections and the immediate textures, and a low res one for the lighting. And so the high res one will be projected onto a sphere for the reflections and the ground plane, and the low res one will be on the environment lighting. So let's have a look at that. So let's create a sphere. Now they roughly say, I think about 10 meters. I mean, sorry, about 50 meters is approximately roughly where infinity would be. I mean, when you're in visual effects, you can start moving into 2D planes at about 50 meters. So that's what we're going to do. So about 50 meters at the edge of the sphere. Let's increase the divisions, something like that. Okay. And now what we'll do is we'll make the sphere. So I don't know why. Let's try it again. 50. Then the next thing I'll do immediately is select the camera and put it into the origin. Okay, this is important because this is where all the projection's happening from. So the further away from the origin you get, the more distortion there will be from the camera's point of view. So that's important to make clear. Okay, so there we got the camera there. So the next thing I'll do is I'll lock its transforms just so we don't accidentally knock it. Now I'm going to assume roughly that the pano head is about 2 meters off the ground. So what we're going to do is go to side view, and if we go to the wireframe, and I'm going to go, what is our units here? Let's get a cube, and let's grab it, stick it there. So okay, so we need to, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab these points, so box select those in in edit mode and put vertices, so select those lot or deselect, and then we'll box select and then we'll scale S, and then in the z-axis 0, so they're all on the same plane. And then what we'll do is we'll transform that so it's about 2 meters beneath the origin, or I mean, I like to keep the origin from where the pano or HDR was originally taken. So I'm estimating it's about 2 meters. Okay, so let's go into the camera. And what I tend to do, so we don't move the camera around, is I immediately will go to the view mode and lock camera. And then when you move the middle mouse button, you can look around without from the projection point without transforming the camera. So that's quite useful. Well, it's extremely useful, in fact. And then if you want to zoom, annoyingly, you have to. I did set up a shortcut for this, but you have to disable the. This is all kind of basic Blender stuff. Disable the camera to view thing and press. Is it Control and middle mouse, and then you can zoom the thing. And that will zoom without changing the focal length. If you want to change the focal length, which is another way of sort of zooming, which is a wider field of views, just select the camera and go to the camera. Why is that not coming up? Are we in? We're in edit mode, that's why. Object mode, select the camera. And then you can go, let's say, 15 or 18 millimeters. And that's relative to a standard 35 millimeter film back, just to make sure we're not talking about crop sensors here. So yeah, so just again, then I'll switch back to the thing and we can look around like this. Great. So that's all, that's initial setup. So let's look at the texture stuff. So we want to do, once for the world, what we'll do is use the image environment texture, open, and then what we'll do is we'll go, I've done already a 1K that I've blurred, open image. See, I'll show you that, and I think you'll see what I mean. I might as well show you the other one as well. So it obviously takes a little bit of time to load onto your graphics card, so you have to be aware about when you use high res, 16K textures, it can suddenly lock up Blender. It would lock up most 3D programs as shifting the texture off disk into graphics card memory. So that's worth mentioning. Okay, so if we go to shader and then we go let's do that. I just want to show you so you know what we're looking at. I'm a bit new to Blender, so you have to bear with me. Right, so there we go. This, you can see, is all blurred. I just took that into Photoshop, blurred it, saved it out exactly as a HDR. So that's going to light our environment for us. So that shouldn't do anything more there, I don't think. I seem to remember. Next thing we do is we'll select the sphere, and we'll create a texture for that. And we'll go into our shaders. I did initially do 2 versions, but I'll do the simple one first, just to keep the video easy, I guess. So if we go add, we'll go again textures, and then environment texture. Stick that in there, and then we'll plug that into the base color. And then what we'll do, because I did 2 versions, one where because in the end you have, well, if you don't want to mess with the exposure or lighting of the HDR image, you really need to have an emissive surface as opposed to a principal BSDF. And then you need to have a ground plane, which is effectively this, which is BSDF with the HDR projected in triangular. I can never pronounce that. Triangular, or the map, like a map view. onto the image plane. So let's just have a look, see if that's. So I'm going to switch onto this. Now this again will lock up the machine, and it would if I had a texture attached to it. So let's go into my textures, and we'll go to the 16K. I mean, I thought, well, let's go 16K. I mean, as you'll see, there are implications whenever you're, changing shading modes and stuff. It'll suddenly lock up Blender as it is doing at the moment, which is perfectly normal. Just have to be patient. I mean, maybe the thing to do would be work using a lower res and then switch it out for the final at the end. And that's right. And we want to first thing we need to do is get rid of the specular. We don't want that. So just a quick demo of the rotating the camera with the middle mouse button. You see that all works great. And also something else, when the camera is on the same projection point as the HDRI, then you get no issues with curved space, the curved horizon lines. The more the camera wanders from the projection point. If we go to yeah, that's right, 3D view, and then we'll select the camera, and we'll just zoom out a bit. And if I transform this, you'll see we'll see the horizon slowly bend. Right? So yeah, there's only so far you can really move. Don't get too carried away, otherwise it just looks like crazy 360 footage or whatever. But you can move quite a lot and get away with quite a lot. So and the next thing I found was that it's important to go to the object and under visibility. We're on EV at the moment. I think that would help. We need to. This only really works in cycles, by the way. Okay. So if we go to the object properties when it's in cycles, I always forget about that. Oh, it seems quite dark. You'll see all those specs, right? Now what we need to do is we need to tell. We're just interested in the reflection aspects of it, and we'll switch those off. And the actual, rendering the image. So I think that's. I might have cranked it up in my I can't remember. Okay, so let's just have a look, see if we can look around. Oh right, something else we need to do is smooth the geometry. There we go, and you'll see. Well, okay, so this is the basic version, but there are issues with it in terms of the actual lighting. You can see it's actually affecting the sphere there. So now let's move on to the slightly more advanced setup, which is using the putting in another plane, which is 2 meters. So let's go mesh plane, and we'll scale that scale nice and big out there, and then we want to make sure that it's about 2 meters just above the, like so. Well, before I do that, let's just chuck a chrome sphere in there and a cube, so you can see it all working. So mesh cube, stick that over here somewhere. You see it's all working, and we get a nice soft shadow from the blurred HDR that's doing the lighting. So okay, but you can see it looks slightly weird, and that's, as I said, because it's let's actually, while we're here, let's do the sphere mesh. Oh god, let's do 50, 25. Okay, stick that over there, and we'll give that its own material as well. Shader, and we'll go material, new, and we'll also do the quick shade, or quick smooth rather, smooth, and we'll make it very metallic, and we'll take it very smooth, and also make it very shiny. Is that right? I think that is right. So you can see now, as we get close to the, it's correct. Let me just move it around to check that it is. You see it's reflecting the environment correctly, because it's reflecting uh, the shadow lighting is coming from the blurred HDR, and the reflections are coming from the sphere with the HDR image on it, which is that high 16K one. Okay, so now let's try and improve it a bit, because as you see, it's a little bit weird. So if I go and select my plane, and I go and give it a material, what we'll do is if I go to shader, and we'll apply the original, this material, and we'll sort out the background because that's not really correct. So if we go to sphere, okay, again with the texture issue, 16K, like presumably 24, was it 3090 or whatever it is, would do that a lot faster. Right, so let's select the so we've got the sphere selected, and we're going to give it a new material. And that's going to be an emissive one. Emission. And let's apply it. Okay, apply it, and then we want to chuck in the environment. This tricked me so many times. Initially, I thought, why can't I just use a spherical map? Is there not a spherical map thing? But that's effectively what the environment map is a spherical map. But it took me ages to try and think, why can't I just do a spherical map? And it's because it calls it an environment map, I think, if I've understood it correctly. So environment texture, plug that in, and then select the 16K, and now it might suddenly lock up as it loads it in. So it's useful to know, you know, obviously if you are using large textures, where the bottlenecks are, so you don't suddenly get surprised, or if you've got a lot of textures and stuff, then you know, save before and all that sort of thing. Right, okay, so let's tab out of that, and now we've got a lovely background, and let's just do the thing so we can look around. Now there's a slight mismatch between obviously the emissive surface of the sphere and the diffuse surface of the road. So the way I fix that, or a way you could fix it, if we just go disable that for now and zoom in a bit, so we've got that nice and big, so we can see this join. I mean, you could presumably put like a feathered mat or something, if you wanted to blend it that way. But another way, just to make sure that there's no sharp line like there is at the moment, what you could do is you could add a curves. So is it curve? RGB curve, and do a slight levels call on it. You can even do a basic color correct, but you see that all works brilliantly, and you can move the camera around a bit, as you can see here. You can move it as far as the image as soon as it intersects the sphere, which, as I say, at about 50 meters is usually in visual effects is where you can start using cards. I mean, it depends a bit on your lens, but that's sort of whether you can get away with stuff then. Just to switch over to EV or to the more real time. So you can see what's going on there, and you could go and paint the texture. You could do a bake. I better stop the video because it's getting a bit long now, but I hope that's some help. And as you can see, I just wanted to touch on the fact that the further away that the camera drifts from the projection point, the more distortion is apparent and more curvature and stuff you get. See, it looks fine low down because we're really close, but as soon as you start drifting, as soon as you start moving the camera up, more than you can start seeing the curvature. So just be aware of that. But yeah, that's a setup that you can do, and this works in most 3D programs in a similar way. It's not, so what you know here you could use in Maya or whatever. Okay, so I hope that's some help. I shall stop the video.